Mm, wonder. That's all. Before we begin the conclusion of last Tuesday's Dharma talk on the three questions that were posed to Buddha Master, I'd like to take a few minutes. That's old Dharma. That was given at some point in time, and it's useful for us to hear because it just expands our understanding of things. But it's not present in the moment Dharma, and it's that present in the moment Dharma that cuts through our kilesas and that subdues our ordinariness. And so I want to talk for just a few minutes on purifying non-virtue, purifying downfalls, and overcoming obstacles. And this practice or this training in a basic way of practicing conditioning ourselves to take up new behaviors based on different attitudes and different understandings is one of the most vital aspects of our practice, our devotion to the Dharma, and our making progress. So I'm going to give you the imaging, and in time, as this is going around, I'm giving you little pieces as opposed to a step-by-step linear type of thing. It's a kind of inculcation as well, but it's better because it doesn't create a rote pattern or way of learning something. Instead, you get a little bit of this, you get a little bit of that, and after a while, you put it together yourself in a way that's real and that's alive for you. So when we're doing our prostrations, we're imagining something in case you haven't known before, but we're seeing a white light and the seed syllable Om here in our forehead, like the third eye, like this light Om in white, in red, right at our throat, Hum, somewhere between the stomach and the heart, which is our activity center, Om, Hum, and that is mind, speech, and body. And they represent something, when we are imagining them, it's like the red, yellow, green, and I think it's red, yellow, green traffic light. In the beginning, we have to learn what red, yellow, and green symbolize. But it's not just the symbology of the red, yellow, and green, it's the application of what they symbolize that makes a difference between whether we have a crash or we don't, and so we get to know red, yellow, and green, but we have to also apply red, yellow, and green. And so when we see a red light, that means stop. We have to stop. And we see a green light that means go. That means we have the freedom to go. And yellow, depending on where you are to the intersection, means hurry up and get through it because the light's changing. Or it means begin to slow down and stop because the light's changing. And so yellow is yellow, and it can have opposite meanings depending on where we are positioned. And likewise, our actions and our response to things fall in the same manner. So there can be an opposite action depending on where we are in the process of executing. And that's what prajna is designed to do, is to give us a reference point for where we are in the process of something, which makes the difference between whether something is, like just loosely saying, right or wrong, whether it's useful or not useful. or whether it's beneficial or not beneficial, whether it will inure to our progress or to our hindrance. You understand what I mean? And so we can take everything that we're learning spiritually and take all of it as a symbol for how to walk out our lives in the world in such a way that we are of the utmost benefit to ourselves and to others, and that we're rooted and grounded in a certain kind of attitude and mindset that allows that to really come forward. I remember when I reached a point in my Christian life that it was very clear to me that the good I would do, I don't do. And what I don't want to do, I still do. And I felt that sense of wretchedness. Oh, wretched man am I. Who's able to deliver me from this? You know, and that was the question that I asked. Now, that was the same question that Paul asked, you know, and Paul had his own theology. He had his own spiritual doctrine. It was the opposite of the Christians, and he had the power to persecute them and to try to enforce his own understanding upon those Jewish converts to this new ideology. You know, like who was Buddha, who was Jesus's teacher? You know, what is his lineage? Because he was Jewish, but yet he was coming forth with this ideology that turned what was upside down right side up. To the one who would taste it, they could see the difference in light and dark. They could see that point of origination where they either stepped on the gas to get through the intersection because the light was yellow, or they slowed down because they had enough time to stop before they hit the intersection. And they could do it. There were more considerations. You have to consider the speed and how the flow of the traffic is moving, because you might be able to stop, but the car behind you might not be able to stop. I mean, there's so many other things that go into an action. And it's that way in our spiritual life. There's so many things that go into an action. And there's so many things that create or that allow something to originate and to have the capacity to think this deeply, to go that deeply, to see that deeply takes a certain life of discipline. And we can say we don't want to, and then that's fine. We just see however we see on whatever level we see, from whatever distance we see, as much as we want to see. You know, but if we want to see more, if we want to know more, we can see more and we can know more. If we don't want to, and the only thing that hinders us from wanting to is because we think it might cost us more than we want to pay for it, more than we want to give, more than we want to surrender, more than we want to protect, more than we want to discover. You know, these are the things that will come up in your life as you move more intimately in step with the nature of marvelous existence. So marvelous existence does cost something, but it's a question of what has value to you. I mean, if we look at a diamond, I think a diamond is just more rock under pressure, but one has a certain value and one is just a rock. You pick that up and toss it out of your way. You know, but we have established the value on that. We established the value. Now, to me, a diamond doesn't have that kind of value. It did at one time. The diamond doesn't have that kind of value. So I don't need to wear them, you know. So in my abandonment of jewelry, it wasn't because for any other reason except that they didn't have that much value to me. It wasn't the kind of adornment that I wanted, that mattered. Now, this is not a case for everybody giving up their jewels. Please understand. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying anybody, you know, because they do have value. You can always sell them and use them for something that you need. Oh, you can just admire them for their beauty. So I'm not saying you have to give them, I'm just saying we can use everything that we hold precious as a means for seeing the ultimate preciousness of a human life and how to use it in the conduct of saving oneself, ultimately getting off the wheel of samsara and for saving living beings. Having an eye for living beings that is as great as the eye that we have for ourselves and our happiness and our families and their happiness. And this is a process. But as we embark upon the process, it may seem tedious. Some stuff that's just not necessary. And that's fine. But there comes a certain state of your engagement with it that it becomes necessary for you individually. And we're all at different places of what is necessary, what gives us life, what gives us breath, what gives us meaning in life. And that's different for everybody. But what I say to you is that any water that stands still becomes stagnant. Water that stands still becomes stagnant. And if we could see ourselves like flowing water, we would get an idea of the sweetness and the great intoxicating flavor of inclining oneself to wisdom. And if we try to have compassion without this kind of wisdom, it will become a dysfunctional kind of compassion, or if we try to have this kind of wisdom without its corresponding state of compassion, we will have crazy wisdom. Crazy wisdom makes us run off into a whole bunch of things, and compassion makes us engage in a false and a phony kind of compassion. And both of them inure to a kind of darkness that one can't see, and that's why the light of wisdom is what we imagine coming, the light of prajna to the mind. And the is represents that light purifying our speech, and the blue representing the central channel of the harmonies of the winds throughout our body, and the male and female channels, or father mother channels, the two being the essence and the lifeline, our essence and our lifeline, our essence and our lifeline coming together into a perfect kind of harmony, and all activity proceeding out of that. I tell you, if you can take it either way. You can learn all the symbology first, and you can begin to see it, or you can experience it and then come to know what it is that you're experiencing. I like the latter way, because the first way it filters through the mind, the second way it filters through the experience, and we help the mind catch up. And so generally, people think that you need a lot of training in something, but you actually need to have trust and confidence in your teacher. Here, I'm not talking about me, but I'm talking about the principles of the Dhamma that are espoused by the great and holy beings. And you can know within yourself whether that how much of that you can use at any given time. So we stay with the purpose of the Buddha's teachings through his example, through the example of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions, and through the Dharma, that's the wisdom teachings that they offer to elevate us and bring us into that same kind of mind. We can't say we want it, but we don't want to hear it. If we want it, we want to hear it. And for it to be instant, pricking, knocking at the door of our heart, at the right time. Sometimes somebody calls you and they want to tell you something that's really important, and you want to hear it, but you can't do it right now. It's not the right time. So it's important that the timing is right. For the opportunity and the willingness to engage with it's so many things that come into creating the perfect moment for an awakening, just a mini awakening to occur. And it's not by chance. It's not by chance. It's through us putting forth the effort to be at the intersection when the bus goes by. And so there's a part that we play in it. There is karma involved in it. And there's effort. There's determination. There is trust. There's confidence. There is an interest. There is, and it's also, it becomes necessary to your survival. An investigation and exploration into this is necessary. It's necessary for my survival. It's germane to my happiness and contentment. Now, other things are too. I do something else. I don't know what. But but if I wanted to do something else, like I could, it's sort of like all I want to do. But I do something. I watch The Mentalist sometimes. I like to go out for good food sometimes. But there's things, so I'm not saying you don't do anything. I'm just saying, but I know I don't care what I'm doing, what I'm in the midst of doing. That the minute I'm always open, one ear like when you have a baby and you're just listening for you listening. I don't care what you're doing. You have one ear attuned to the fact that the baby's over there in the other room. Yes, I'm doing this right now and I'm having a good time, but I'm always attentive, listening for the cry of the baby, the need of that. And I'm saying when the Dharma gets that way for you, everything you do then becomes Dharma. Everything you do, it takes on a whole different quality, a whole different music, meaning because it's infused with something that's like as necessary as your breath. And then it ceases to be separate from you. It becomes a part of you, or you dissolve into that. That's a good word to remember, dissolve, because that's how we uproot the self. We don't just pull self off and toss it away. We actually keep hitting you. Oh, sorry. I just stopped moving my hands. I don't know if it's possible. But that's why the notion or the image of dissolving, like we can't tear ourselves away from ourselves. But the more that we embrace the Dharma, the more we taste of its sweetness, the more, even when it's tough on us, that it helps us to know where we are, not just where we are on the Buddhist map, just where we are, period, so that we don't think something about ourselves that's not genuine, and that we do think something about ourselves that we normally can't in our ordinary thinking think about ourselves. We can't elevate ourselves to a certain state because we're always thinking like we're such a mess up. We're wretch undone. Back in the Romans, say, what I would do, I don't do. What I don't want to do, I do. So everything has to have a certain balance, And when we're out of balance one way or the other, we get lost in our arrogance and the blindness of that, or we get lost in our self-deprecation and all of the danger in thinking I'm so unworthy, And so it takes the right balance of that. But this dissolving of either one of those senses of self occurs as opposed to us cutting ourselves off of self. So if we see the great advantage and the beauty of the Dharma and how we become, how we assimilate and just become dissolved in the Dharma. That is the destruction of the self without sorrow and without remainder. And so the whom or hung that is abiding here at the altar of our heart, is represents all of our activities, our sublime activities. And when we're doing a Dharma, like might be reading Dharma to you today, and that's one little small, minuscule aspect of Dharma. But when we're actually doing a Dharma, and that's what we do in our truest levels of meditation. We are doing Dharma. We are first, when I say imagining, I mean we're projecting both forward and backwards. We're projecting backwards to come to the point of our original nature, our true nature, which is Panyawadi doesn't have a Dhammakaya. There's a Dhammakaya expressing as Panyawadi. And so that's our original nature. And then we're all also projecting forward in a sense, forward meaning putting in front of, not forward like the future, forward like putting in front of, not forward like future. Forward is in putting in front of ourselves with our ordinary minds, the fact that we have the same nature as the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And so we imagine a Buddha or a Bodhisattva of our choosing, knowing that that's a mind-created Buddha or Bodhisattva, not the actual one, because we're imagining it in our own mind, and we're imagining the qualities resident and the characteristics of that being in the way our own mind can imagine them, like Manjur Shri being the epitome of wisdom, Kuan Yin being the epitome of compassion and power, not just compassion and the abilities to consummate some actions that transform situations, so in these kinds of ways, we're imagining a being like my personal deity practice or unit practice is Sarva Nivarana Vishkabim, and that's Sarva Nivarana Vishkabim right there. And his quality, his attribute, the symbol of that particular ancient Buddha is fearlessness. And that's what I practice, the fearlessness to receive the Dhamma, with its fire, to allow it to burn away, the self, is the fearlessness to speak it boldly, and not have to worry about whether I'll lose my friends if I do, that I have to say what I need to say to keep my friends or I'll lose them. The fearlessness to go against the stream, to stand for what I truly in my heart believe is right. The fearlessness to be affronted and confronted, the fearlessness to be rejected and unknown, the fearlessness, all of the fearlessness I need to tackle the issue, not only the issues, the vicissitudes of life, but my companions in life, whether they're longtime friends, whether I'm just meeting them for the first time, don't know who's in front of me, or whether they're even my enemies. And so that's the practice that I do. And you will see that nature expressing to the extent that I hold fast to this kind of to this particular practice. So we're all practicing something, and it shows up in our thoughts, our speech, and our action. Whatever it is that you're practicing, that does show up. And the one who has the light of the Dharma, it's not that they know so much, but the light is shining bright enough that one can see what's in front of them, regardless of what's said, regardless of what's done, regardless of how well they can cover it up, regardless of how much perfume they can spray to cover the stink, regardless of, and so that's it. It has nothing to do with the individual. It has to do with the light of prajna that shines, that you can see what's in the room. That's all. And if you yourself are not practicing, then you'll be like one with cataracts. It'll be fuzzy. So then the mind will be confused about what they actually see. And their speech and action will correspond to that fuzziness. And so all of this, if you can see all of this imagery around the Dharma, whether it's flowery, whether it seems far-fetched, whether it seems rational and pragmatic, all of it, is just the foolishness and of language prajna. And so if we grasp around that language prajna, trying to make sense of it, we can not, because it can't bring us the actual thing. But when we take it in that way, without an agenda, it has a way of seeping through the pores, coming into the inner space, and then one actually knows what things are, but just with the right flavor, with the right shading, with the right amount of pressure, with the right amount of encouragement, with the right amount of correction, with the right amount. And that's what he calls naturally. Naturally. If we think naturally is nothing, doing nothing, then we will never get into the natural ground, get on that natural ground of being, where things come easily, they come quickly. Some of it is about just restraint to not want to push forward with what we intellectually understand, but to really go through the exercise of lifting those weights until our muscles really have built up. And the sister over here can tell you, if you start doing that too much or too fast, you will hurt yourself instead of actually building your strength. You'll tear up something, you'll rip something, and you may make it so that you can never recover in this life. Just because running ahead of what we actually have the capacity to do. And being honest about that, being able to see that not as a weakness. It's not a weakness. It's not a downfall. It's what it is. And but if we think it's a weakness, then we try to conceal it with some other fluff and puff up. If we think it's a downfall, we try to hide it, and then cannot work through it. And so that's just the ordinary mind's way of trying to protect its self-image, what it has constructed, and what it wants to show to the world. But all of that begins to fall away, and all the stress of that, and all the weight of that, as we grow in our understanding, and as we become more endeared to the Dharma, we will find that it is a friend that sticks closer than any brother. And one can walk, in a way we do all walk alone. And so we can do that, and we can be with others, or we can be without others. Excuse me, one second. so we can be with others and uh, and never feel alone. And we can be with others and be alone. We can be without others and never feel FEEL alone, because there is a self-containment. Is that all right? Okay. Okay. So there's been a lot of talk about the Vinaya Sutras lately because Yeshi is taking ordination this Sunday, seminary Papa Job. So there's been a lot of thinking at the monastery around vows and what they mean and so forth. But in the Vinaya Sutras, the Buddha says, abandoning non-virtuous actions, practicing virtuous ones, and controlling your mind. This is the Buddha Dharma. All right. The Buddha says in the Vinaya Sutras, abandoning non-actions, practicing virtuous actions, and controlling the mind. This is Buddha Dharma. So when we're doing our Yidam practices, we are imagining that we are transforming into a holy being. And for a period of time, we're going to sit in that imagined, that mind fabricated kind of space. Trying it on for size, like when we're little children and we're walking around in mommy's high heel shoes and her Sunday go to church hat, you know, or and then we're pretending we're grown up, something like that. So we're pretending we're spiritually grown up, and so that's the first part of it, that we're asking that being to descend and we're becoming diffused in their essence, or what we imagine that essence to be, the highest qualities of mind, of understanding, of virtue, of compassion, of wisdom, of love, of capacity, of attainment, and with the resultant proofs of it. Not just all those qualities, but it can't do nothing in the world, but with the resultant proofs of it. So much so that we'll no longer be conformed to what information the senses give us, and we'll see that, but yet we can change the structure of appearances by the power of our mind, the purity of it, that we can reconstruct and recreate. And this is not defying the laws of nature. This is entering into the higher laws of nature, ones that supersede other ones, like aerodynamics superseding the law of gravity. It doesn't mean the law of gravity is not there and it's not the prevailing predominant force, but there are some things that can be done that allows one to supersede the law of gravity. To what extent? I don't know, shoot something with a rubber band. It might go 4 feet, but you shoot something like with the velocity of the mechanism of a gun, it might go 400 yards, So, I mean, everything we could just look at through and understand spiritual things just through understanding natural things. That's why all worldly Dharma is Buddha Dharma. So, so that's really the Dharma talk for today. And this is important because I'm trying to shift your understanding of what meditation actually is and how to engage in a kind of meditation that will have benefits that's a little bit more than stress reduction or just checking out for a minute. But that has an effectual, fervent power embedded in it that will be unleashed on a troubled world and bring about benefits and results. Yeah. Okay. So who remembers where I was in this story? Last week, who remembers any part of the story? Maybe I shouldn't have started the story. Uh, okay, I had gone from that one. Okay. But where was I in the actual story? You did start it. Yeah, I did. Just started it. I just started it. Okay, good. Then I can pick up. And regarding the mantra for raising consciousness, it should be said that whether the consciousness of the deceased can be raised depends on realization power of the practitioner. If the practitioner possesses great realization power, then they can raise the consciousness of the deceased. Raising the consciousness here, we're not talking about bringing somebody back to life, but we're talking about absorbing, removing some of the obstacles in the same way that I'm speaking to you right now with a kind of human English language that brings some clarity, to the confusion that might be in your mind. In the same way, raising the consciousness on another level is bringing some clarity that's dispelling some non-elevating thoughts in the mind of that deceased. Deceased doesn't mean dead. It just means not here. So when we die, we don't like just go nowhere and there's nothing. That would be nihilism. There's nothing left, and that's not a view that we hold to. That there is something that moves forward, and that spark of fruition is the result of the actions that we have taken in this life. And if all being neutral in this life, that there was no remainder, then it goes to the actions from the next previous life and the ones from that. But that's not always standard, because there's some actions that we take that are graver than others, or that produce more good fruit than others. And it may be the maturing, and then that's when it starts to get into the minutiae of the mind, trying to understand how the intricacies of Dharma, and we can't with our ordinary mind. But just know it's something like that, okay? And that's enough to give us a basis for setting standards on what we do. And so that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about raising the dead, but just relieving, with our brightness, the same way we're gaining brightness as we imagine. Oh, I guess I didn't finish that. We imagine that we are merging with the mind stream of these holy beings based on our desire and the efforts that we put behind our desire. We don't just desire it, but we're putting effort behind it to assimilate the same kinds of thoughts, same kinds of words, same kinds of behaviors. And as we're doing that, then we're getting more on the same frequency, the same vibration, the same level of intention and attitude, as these holy beings, as much as we can fathom it in our own mind, right? And so our mind is turning in that way, and then we sort of envision them filling, almost like just a pouring in of such brightness and purity, filling our whole body and emanating from us. Basically, I won't say pushing us out, but us dissolving into that. And then, and that takes time to just see that. When we do things, when we could say that's not good, and we can say, like, when I would do good, evil's always with me, or something in my mind is making me do or something, or think of something in a certain way, or handling it in a certain way, and I can be doing it, executing it, knowing that it's not fruitful, or won't be fruitful. It won't be taking me in the direction, but I'm hell bent on carrying this out at the moment because that's just how I feel. And and so as we're doing this, you know, without seemingly an ability to stop ourselves at this moment, although it really is not satisfying, yet we can't stop it. Although it's not really the way I want to be, yet there's something that seems to be propelling me and pushing me in this way. Yeah. But now that I'm using the power of my mind to neutralize that push, to build up a standard against it, to build up a framework, a wall for holding it at bay, and that's allowing me to create a discipline around my response to something so that what I would do, I can do it. And what I don't want to do, I cannot do it. And the confidence that comes with that I am in control of me, it's unspeakable how much ease it brings. Forget confidence, how much ease it brings. The releasing of pressure, that I don't need a yoke. I don't need a collar. I don't need, I don't need anything. There I am. And I'm at peace with myself. And because I'm at peace with myself, I can be at peace with you. And if you're not at peace with yourself, that's your issue. That's your matter. I'll help you with it as much as I can, but I'm not going to let you destroy mine. And to be able to hold oneself and sustain, have that, it's confidence, but not in a puffed up, proud kind of confidence. It is like a blessed assurance. And I gave it to myself. That's why I know what it is. What you give me, I have to unwrap and see what's in the package. But this, I know myself because I gave it to myself. And so one can walk through the world in this way, as if for experiencing what it feels like to sit in that mind, to sit in that mind stream, to ascend to that state, to be in that frequency, and you're touching it. And you're doing it all by one's own effort, by one's own intention, and to the extent that one could actually bring it into being, create it. And so that's what we do. We know the attributes that we are personifying, that we're giving life to, beingness to, and then we're positing it in us, neutralizing and uprooting these false notions of who we are. And we rest in that purity. That's how one actually enters into a jhana that's not like a lifeless whole of nothingness. And that's how one attains to the vision of marvelous wisdom in the very midst of emptiness. And that's the difference. And so we're just sitting in that peaceful abiding. That's the true tranquil abiding. And the same way as you sit and you can feel your heartbeat, and you may not feel every little sensation that's going on in the body that lets you know you're alive, but you know you're alive. And when you're doing things, you may not have a sense of your aliveness, but when you're still, and I could feel the least little flutter in my heart. Sometimes it's like, oh, my heart's fluttering. What does that mean? I might need to call somebody. You can just feel a little. I think my heart's beating steadily. Boom, 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 boom. But then I'm feeling now there's a little flutter right there. There's a little movement in there. I'm aware of everything that's going on in there. Just aware of it. Haven't been aware before. Wasn't aware a few minutes ago. Start talking, won't be aware of it now. Then when I can get into that place, which is what we're doing in our meditation, then one becomes aware. And there's a kind of harmony there, a kind of non-differentiation after that awareness settles down gradually, gradually, gradually. There becomes a non-discrimination in the sense that first you became discriminatingly aware of something that you are focusing on that's going to transport you to a corresponding state. So what you're focusing on is going to transport you to that state. So be careful of what you're focusing on. And then the second thing is it took that focus then to bring you to a state that your six gates could not function. It's not that they're not there. It's that in the presence of this state, they are frozen. They can't move. They can't function. They don't operate. So you are, though, in the atmosphere of some state. It's just not the state of the ordinary six consciousnesses. And then later, it also covers the seventh consciousness. And then later, it covers the eighth consciousness. So this is not a consciousness that we have. It is the consciousness that emerges out of pure prajna. And then we don't have that much to do when we're in meditation. We just enter the state, experience it, come to know it altogether for that space of time. May not be able to hold it long, maybe 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe 5 hours, maybe 2 days. I mean, don't know, because in that space, it's like, it's timeless there. But when we come back to our relative consciousness, dropping into the lower consciousnesses that control our thought, then we come back into time. This time, maybe if we were on another planet in another part of the galaxy or in a higher place, the time is still not the same. Because it is a construct that is formed of the lower consciousnesses. Okay, so I will go faster now. Regarding the mantra for raising consciousness, it should be said that whether the consciousness of the deceased can be raised depends on the realization power of the practitioner. If the practitioner possesses great realization power, they can raise the consciousness of the deceased. If their power is not great, then they have no way to do that. Whether it's possible to invoke a response from heaven and the worlds of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas has to do with the practitioner who is raising the consciousness. So when we're sending out that spotlight, bringing this into our body, speech, and mind in a living way, in a real way, starting with imagining it and bringing it bit by bit into a concretized view, then we're sending up a signal, making contact with the beings who function on that level, and they respond to that and come into our presence. Simply speaking, those who always abstain from doing bad and do all kinds of good have planted causes from innumerable lifetimes and many kalpas. So it's not just the good you do now. You got a whole lot of backing of good. That's the thing you should know. It's not just the bad that you do now and you stop doing it. You got a whole lot of other stuff that wasn't so good that also has been pushed forward, and it will have its flowering. The whole thing about it is getting oneself into a position that by the time that fruit flowers, you're in a position to handle it. So it doesn't bowl you over, it doesn't overcome you, doesn't completely wipe you out, make you hopeless. It doesn't, but that can come and you can say, no big deal. I understand cause and condition. There's no way that could be in my life except that there are the causes that are producing this condition. It's coming at a time I can handle it. What's awful is when it comes at a time that we're not ready for it. We're not ready to handle it. Um, and so naturally, their dark karma is light, and their good karma is heavy, which is crucial. The principle in raising consciousness and in invoking response from heaven is the same. Some people can easily invoke a response. Some people cannot. Sometimes the outer condition changes, shifts, something steps into the picture that wasn't even on, wasn't in anybody's mind. Sometimes we call that synchronicity. You can call it whatever you want, but there is the inflow of something that wasn't part of the plan that just made everything okay, But sometimes it is not. It's like that's how it is. Deal with it, Panwadi. And so one can just easily say, okay, I'll do the best I can. When I've done that, it's like this. It's like turning over the hand. No attachment to it one way or the other. It's either something to make use of or something to learn from, to grow. And that's how you can handle the vicissitudes of life. Some people can easily invoke a response. Some people cannot. There used to be a holy person known as Dharma Master Yang Ding, and he was a fellow brother of yours. Some of you disciples knew him, some didn't. Did anyone here know him? Oh, I see. Two people used to know him. They didn't know him. She didn't know him. Don't point at her. Pointing at her is meaningless. And she did not raise her hand. That means she didn't know him. Dharma Master Yang Ding was a holy monk, and I talked about that last week. Dharma Master Yang Ding was a holy monk and a disciple of mine. His knowledge and views were very pure and correct. And I remember reading this. And this was about the guy who predicted the weather for 3 days, and it happened. So they came back and said, look, we're behind time. We're building this museum, art museum. The Chinese government is sponsoring it and paying for it, and they don't play. They mean, like, if it's supposed to be done by this date, it should be done by this date, and not heads are gonna roll. And so we really need help. We're scared. Can you give us the weather pattern for the next 3 months so we can finish this on time? On the days that it's windy, we'll know not to try to do this, to do this. On days that it's raining, instead of doing this or going out, we'll do this. And so that we can seize the essence of the time. He said, no, I can't do anything like that. No, I shouldn't be doing it. I don't even have the power to do that. And they were saying, yes, we know you do because you did this. And then he says, well, okay, I'll think about it. And so he did it. And so he said that he would have to consult the God of the heavens. I think it's the I don't want to tell you the wrong. I don't want to tell you the wrong heaven, so I'm not gonna name it. But it is the heaven of the Taoists and the immortals and the Jade Emperor is
That's what he said about the
Jade Emperor is the ruler of that. And so he said I would have to consult the Jade Emperor, and because he would give me the answers that I seek. And so he went into solitary practice for only a half a day. And he came back and he said, it's been resolved. Everything's resolved. Give me a pen and I'll write it all down for you. And he did it. And so they said, that's what happened. That's how we were able. Now he could have done lots of other things. I mean, he could have fed the hungry. He could have given clothes to the naked. But a lot of people can do that because that is within their Dharma power to do. But he had the Dharma power to do this, and that was something that was needed. And he did that with his Dharma ability, through the virtue of his cultivation. So you can have the wrong idea about powers if you're thinking about it from the ordinary mind looking up at powers. But when you perch high looking down at powers, they don't become powers. They simply helps at different levels, at different, capacities. And so, and this is Buddha Master speaking, and he said, tell him to come here. And finally, when he came, he first prostrated to me. And I said, why have you done such a thing? And he said, they requested it for the construction work of the Master's Museum. So I had no choice. So I did. He said, fine, fine. That's not an issue. That's not an issue. That's fine. At this point, of course, I will repent for incurring dark karma in a way that I treated monk Yang Ding. Now listen to this, because it's going to have a purpose, and I don't want you to be confused. I still feel very bad about this. Why am I repenting of this matter in front of you, my disciples, and in front of everyone else? Now, who's repenting? Okay. You may wonder, how can the Buddha have any sin? Why repent? That was a wrong decision in the first place. One time when I went there, everyone was studying the treatise on entering the Dharma gate, but he wasn't studying. Truth be told, it was reasonable for him to not study it, since he was already a holy monk. He was even able to subdue the tree spirit on that numbered tree out at Gautang Temple by applying the palm thunder. What had happened was documented in the audio recording of one of the Dhammas I imparted. He accomplished many feats, an overwhelming number of feats, it can be said, that nowadays no eminent monastics in the world would dare to compare themselves to him. He was that outstanding. He did not read the treatise on entering the Dharma gate. I asked him, did you read it yet? He said he didn't, and he explained himself to me. I said, I tell you, I must punish you. I was very angry. I said, why didn't you read it? You are absolutely ridiculous. I said to the others, have him punish him. And then I made a remark in passing, don't give him his monthly stipend anymore. Don't give it to him. I had made such a remark in passing without rigorous consideration, and they implemented what I said. As a result, he became penniless for 3 full years. When I visited Jingwei Shang again after 3 years, I saw that he was severely underweight with a sallow complexion. He had had nothing to eat and was eating grass that he pulled from the soil as food because he had no money. He didn't have anything. I asked, why wasn't he paid? And Kerjiao Jin said, and the other said, didn't Master tell us to stop issuing his monthly stipend? I said, that's terrible. It's so terrible. This is a very serious matter. Even though the monthly stipend was then reinstated, his health had become very frail. I was making that remark in passing, disciples. Nonetheless, I indeed incurred a kind of dark karma. I feel very bad. Even though Monk Yang Ding was my disciple, the remark that I made in passing was such a blow for him, as if a bolt from the blue had crumbled a tall building. And that is why I now no longer speak so lightly. Even though I say that you are to be punished, I will only let the punishment go on for a very short period. That's why our monastics are not afraid of me at all. No matter what I say, they don't care at all, because they're not afraid. They're not afraid of being punished because they know that it will be over in just a moment. It's burning that thing. It's very often right after I've handed down the punishment, I make an immediate decision. Since I often handle matters over the walkie-talkie, I worry that I might forget. I tell someone, remember, wait a few more minutes, wait 3 more minutes, and then let that go. Forget it. Or I'll say, wait for 5 minutes and then let that go. It's bringing your awareness to the seriousness of something, and then the minute that it's captured and understood, that's it. It's over. This idea of carrying things a long time, or that they have these long, far-reaching consequences and effects. It's not like that. It's in the minute. If you want to pop the balloon, stick a pin in it, pop it, and it's done. And then we move on. But we have to look like we want to slow bleed, but it's not like that. And when you start to understand that, you'll no longer fear when the pointing out of something, and he was talking about his feeling compelled to do something, because people wanted him to do that. And he was dealing with him in his mind. But everybody heard it, and they took it to mean what they took it to mean. But he was dealing with him in that 1 minute. But they dragged this on because, we got to punish him. Because Buddha Master said, punish him. Of course, he wasn't Buddha Master at that time. He was a high-level Dharma king, and that and it hadn't been um, confirmed that um, that he was the reincarnation of Dorje Chang Buddha at that time. But nevertheless, I'm saying something here that's very important for you to get in the progression of things. And one of them is not to look from the outside and think you know a situation from its totality. You only know it from how you're looking at it through the lens of your own experience and your own understanding. It gets critically important at this stage, and it can actually hinder people's forward movement. It can destroy a person and completely take them off the path. I can't get this across enough. And Buddha Master was using himself as an example to show you how critically important this is. This is not a low-level Dharma. This is a high-level Dharma. And we have to come up to a high standard to be able to utilize it properly so that it becomes a help and not not a hindrance. It'll be like the difference in somebody shooting somebody, I don't know, with a is there such thing as a 25 pistol?
22.
22. Okay, shooting somebody with a 22 versus an AK-47. AK-47 will completely obliterate them, can't even find the parts. Um, and so he said, so he's saying basically any disciple of mine who knows anything about the Dharma knows it's only for that minute. So in the Bible, when it talks about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, I don't think it means exactly you chop off my son's hand, I chop off your son's hand. You know, that's taking something literally. But I think it does mean just let the penalty fit the crime. You know, don't send somebody to jail for 15 years for stealing a candy bar the third time. 3 strikes, you're out. Mandatory 15 years, even if it's a 10-cent candy bar. I'm saying it's things like that. After 5 minutes, someone would say, Master, it's time. I would say to the person being punished, that's it. It was so ridiculous of you. That's what I want you to see. Your ridiculousness in doing that. Everyone already knows that so well about me. I say this from my heart. Everything I do is for your own good. I do not have even a little bit of selfishness or impure thought about it at all. If I did, disciples, I would not have mentioned this incident to you. This was a terrible thing. Why did I say that? He truly was a holy monk. It was no joke that he could have liaison with God and upon or any of the heavenly beings, and upon return give a 3-month forecast. After 3 months had passed, the forecast was completely correct, without one missing day. Every single day was marked as accurate, whether it was rain, whether it was wind, etc. You can tell what kind of holy monk he was by his accomplishment. Do you understand? His conduct was not only an exemplar for you to emulate, but many great bodhisattvas also need to learn from him. He was very remarkable and had planted good karma and merit so abundantly, but I won't tell you about that now. He was very outstanding. I can say that among all the disciples here, no one's conduct can be compared to the purity of his karma. You are too inferior in comparison. And in saying this, I'm not concerned that you might be embarrassed. Initially, he was a disciple of Grandmaster, my father. Later, he also became my disciple and learned Dharma from me, and he was very exceptional. His father, Buddha Master's father, was a Taoist. And when it was foretold of who he was an incarnation of, they sent him off and they sent him to the Buddhists to learn from, to remember, and to be in the environment that was most conducive for the mantle that he would take up when the time was right. I was not talking about his power of invocation just now. Talking about his power of invocation, one of the incidents that is to be able to employ to seek the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who have the capacity, same way we have certain capacities to assist other beings in our classification, human, and in other classifications like animals, etc. Not just animals, but ghosts in this realm as well. Um, so he says, I was not just talking about his power of invocation, talking about his power of invocation. One of the incidents was related to his sister-in-law by the name of Yu Shanglian. I talked about this incident before, but I'll talk about it again today. I used to be a doctor and, of course, a painter as well. I did all kinds of things. Several hundred patients used to register to see me every day. The walls of my home were completely covered with red pennants. It was almost impossible to see any white or wood or color, and that's like acknowledgement, from the government and stuff of his service to people. I never accepted any money for treating those people's illnesses. Ever since the past, since my childhood years, to the time I was selling the paintings at Bhagwan Temple, and he would give all of the money he got from the paintings from the temple to the temple. So it wasn't that he was working for himself. The money forever went into the ministry until he departed here, and his last painting, I think, sold for 16 or 23, 16, I think 16, okay, $1 million. And that was the money. That's why he could have a ministry that didn't ask for any offerings. He did not work. He did not do things. He just didn't take the money for himself beyond food, clothing, shelter, because he didn't have any need for anything else, but it went and it allowed him to make the teachings available to as many people. So in the beginning, he was accepting offerings because it's good for the offerer. But later on, because there was so much coming his way, said his wife sat down and said, "You absolutely cannot accept any offerings anymore because there's so much amassing that people will think that you're like, you're looking for money. So that's what's in their mind." And so he says, okay, from this point on, nothing. That's why sometimes when he's reading, people have bought things and money or jewels and they've left them alone. He said, whose is this? Come take this back. I have said time and time again, I will not accept offerings. And he looked at me and said, of course, you got to accept offerings. I meant, I have no abilities, So, but I said, but Buddha Master, I want to be like you. He said, but you're not. And so that was just, I'm like, couldn't you do a drink and give me a little bit of something, a little bit of juice, a little bit of dispensation? So, I could say, I don't take any offerings either, but that's just not the place that I'm at right now. But I tell you, it is my desire, even when I stepped out on embarking on the road, even as a Christian, before I was called to this word, I said, okay, Jesus, I'll go. But this is what I'm going to tell you. I do not want to be dependent on people. I don't want to have to be looking for money to sustain myself. And I don't want to be begging for anything. So if you don't give me the ability, to like produce the means to carry this on, I'm not going. I ended up going anyway. But if I wish I had known Buddha Master first, and because I would have asked for the Dharma of what is it? No, the first one of the no, the first one of the Samu. The nobody asked. Yeah, what is it? It's the one of blessings and good fortune or something like that. And he said, because it takes good fortune to be able to do work in this world. He said, that's this world. This world has its own laws, so it takes something to be able to do this work. So you scuffling around and piddling and pitiful, that's because you wanted the bodhisattva vow. You wanted the high holy state. What you needed was good fortune to be able to have the time to practice and lead people quickly into the high and holy state. But who knew? I didn't know that at that time. Because I was in a discipline, a practice where it was a partial teaching. It was a good part, but it was still partial. You understand? But I think still struggling and still putting forth the effort with whatever I have, however you find me, that's how I am, created the conditions for me to be here now. you know. So I have no regrets in that time. So time has moved on. Now all I can do is ask for long life so that I can't recover the past. But give me an extension here, and then I might still have enough time to do the good that I would do, you know. So this is how we have to understand things. This is how we have to understand uh, others and what others' aspirations are without thinking there's some ulterior motive or like just not understanding. The one thing the Westerners don't like to talk about is they don't like to talk about money because they have some. When you get into these Eastern countries where the majority of the people don't, then you know it's not a thing because they're not trying to protect anything because they don't have it. You know, so it's that we have to think deeply of where you know, what our thoughts are rooted in and what platform they are established upon. And when we get a different mind, then our mind shifts and we act in accord with that. Not out of appeal or anything else, we act out of accord of that. And every action that we take is feeding our own field of merit. Although we are the giver and that there is a receiver. But when the receiver stops thinking that they are the recipient, then there is the giver and the gift. And when the receiver stops thinking that anything has been given on their side, there's just the giver and what he thinks he's giving. And as he starts to work on that side, the way the receiver is working on their side, then there will be no giver, there will be no receiver, and there will be no gift. And that is the perfect freedom. But you can't like just talk that stuff out, you know. It has to be something that comes upon you as the light dawns and one recognizes what is the real reason that they have, you know, whatever it is that they have, whether they have wisdom, or whether they have patience, or whether they have love, or whether they have fortune, good fortune, or whatever it is they have. And see all of the means by which that has come and the conditions and the helps of others that allows them to have that. Everything that's in this room that allows us to sit here. I can't say that we did it. We didn't build this building. We didn't make the equipment. We didn't, you know, it came through people giving their lives minute by minute, working, toiling, making this stuff for people, the clothes we wear in sweatshops somewhere where they're working all day, locked in a room for 16 hours, can't even leave out. That's why they have fires over there and they burn up because they put them to work and lock the doors so that they can't even get out. Like we parade around strutting like peacocks is how good we look at this thing that we have, not knowing the untold hours of people's lives that have been given to have. I'm saying we have to look at things and see them for as they are, and that's what will bring us into a right alignment, a right view of things. But if we're not looking at those things, it's like, why is he always talking about looking at all that roasted down, depressing stuff? It's because it's a real thing. It's a real thing, but we're so far removed from it. That's the part of our good fortune. What is it? It might not be our good fortune that we're removed, because if we're removed, we can't see it. And so we never really touch it. Not in a real way. And that's why when we go to some of these places, you know, our hearts break open when we see the living conditions of some people, you know. And we feel so good going through the villages, dropping a few coins here, a few coins there, doing this, and buying their stuff back to pass out as gifts for people when we come back. And then we forgot about, boy, wasn't that an experience? Yes, it was, you know, and then we just go right on with our life. You know, but this is about really being transformed by everything that we touch and that we see, and by opening ourselves up, not afraid to really see in a very deep way and to discover like what could I do in a real way, and allowing something to rise up. And so this is also the path of practice and blessings. And when your mind changes, don't worry, you won't be pining for the old view. You will love the new view. Even if it seems hard, even if it seems harsh, even if it seems unfair, whatever, however it looks to you, you can accept it as the reality. And you can know whether there's something you can do, something you can't do, whether it's for you to do, even though you could do it. Is it for you to do? Or is it for, you can know where you fit in the whole scheme of things. And just knowing where you fit, knowing where you belong is so satisfying is not the word. It's so peaceful to know what your schlick is, what you should be doing. It brings a kind of cohesiveness to yourself that you're not torn, should I do this or that? Should I be here? Should I be there? You start to know where you belong. And one can just relax into that. And then whatever happens in that environment becomes a joy, not something to constantly look at sideways or to criticize. You see, it will occur naturally. And once you start to see it in that way that we see from, have an inner vision that sees outward, then one will recognize ones who are practicing like this, they also see. And this is a scene that's undeniable. It's unmistakable. So I used to be a doctor and, of course, and a painter. I did all kinds of things. Several hundred patients used to register to see me every day. I don't know any doctor that sees several hundred patients a day. I really don't. He said one time it was usually around 500 patients a day. And so he didn't go like to a medical school to become a doctor. These are the qualities that arose in him, the capacities through his practice. So someone would come in and he would know what through that wisdom what was wrong with him and what the cure should be, what plant or what medicine, and he would get formulas to make medicines. He also has this huge tea company that had was voted the number one tea in China. That's how it came to the government's attention. Things start happening on a grand scale through the efforts of somebody and a group. Then they start to feel threatened that this person could be a threat to the state. So then they start sending spies into the camp and checking out and things like that. So we had this tea, and it had lots of different businesses, the towel company or this or that. I don't know, maybe 50 different businesses, because the idea would just come up. So sometimes ideas are coming up in my head now. I was scared to share them with Soma and Busita because they're now venerable, I'm like, okay, but I'm just going to lay it out here. I'm not saying that we have to act on it. I'm not saying we should do something. But what I'm telling you is I am getting to the place that all worldly Dharma is Buddha Dharma. At one time, I saw worldly Dharma as worldly Dharma, Buddha Dharma as Buddha Dharma. And if I'm trying to function with that kind of mindset, it is an impure kind of mindset. That's why I had a lot of trouble with it, like one was on one side and one was on the other side. But as this starts to merge, that's the time that one can activate when all worldly Dharma is Buddha Dharma. So anything that I'm doing, for me is Buddha Dharma. And so that's the time to do something, not when you think that there's worldly Dharma and there's Buddha Dharma. But when that is coalesced in such a way that all worldly Dharma is Buddha Dharma, anything I'm doing, whether it looks worldly or whatever, that's Buddha Dharma. That's one's own mind. That's not one outside person's view of one's mind. That's one's own mind. That's why you got to really know your mind. So he says, up to now, so I never accepted any money for treating there, and I'm going to end in a few minutes. Ever since the past, since my childhood years to the time I was selling paintings at the temple, until now, I've never needed anyone's offerings. Why? Because I feel I am indebted to living beings. The roads I walk on are built by living beings. The clothes I wear are made with the fabric woven by living beings. The food I eat comes from crops farmed by living beings. Even though I make money legitimately by selling what I make professionally, even though I can make a living, what I eat has come from living beings. After all living beings and people are my parents. That is my mind. That's why I don't want anything else from them. All I want to do is to love them and to care for them. I can explicitly and boldly tell you today, disciples, even though this should not be said arrogantly, perhaps it's rather terrible since this kind of behavior doesn't look good. Nevertheless, these are my heartfelt words. No holy persons in the past have done this before. I'm the only one who's done it. Moreover, this is what I will do throughout my life. This is what I will do forever. I will always put people, living beings, world peace, and all interests of the nation first. I am of little significance. I am simply a cultivator filled with humility. I will never take offerings from people. Wasn't I just talking about invocation power and raising consciousness? Well, that's why I mentioned Young Ding's power of invocation, the power to call on the beings for help it to support. It's not the way you think. It has to do with whether you have the invocation power, whether you can invoke response from the gods or the heavenly beings. It is, of course, inevitable to talk about these things. And it's 1:32. Can I just go for a few more minutes or no? Oh, y'all tricking me. Actually, you might need to make it a few more minutes fast. I understand. There was a time when Yu Yang was seeking treatment from me for her illness. One day, she suddenly said, I really want to introduce my brother to Master. I said, what about your brother? She said, my brother's super nice. He's so wonderful. He's the most wonderful person in the world. I didn't ask her much. I said, what did your brother do? She told me that he learned Dharma and so on and so forth. And then she recounted what happened. I asked her what her brother's name was. She said his name was Li Bing Jun. Since I had never heard of that name before, I asked, can you tell me how wonderful he is? At that time, I saw so many patients that I was completely surrounded by people. Since I didn't accept money, everyone wanted to seek treatment from me, even though I wasn't that capable. At least I didn't accept money. They didn't have to pay for medicine, and they didn't have to pay for anything. Even the herbal medicine that I gave them, I picked it myself. Then she told me about an incident in the past. It was about the drought in a town known as Lantern Embankment. She said there was once a severe drought and the earth was so dry that the soil cracked and all the crops planted by the farmers died. And they performed rituals, Taoist rituals and dharmas to pray for rain, but no rain, but it had all failed to produce one drop of rain. And she said she had a dream one night. That night, she suddenly had a vivid dream about two people who came wearing either black or red hats. They told her, if you want to pray for rain, all you need is for one person to write his name on a plea. If that person is willing to sign his name, then there will be rain. And she asked who this person was. They said his name is Li Bing Jun. Have him sign this name. After she woke up, she thought it over repeatedly. She'd never heard the name before, never. Who was this person? Then the young woman, Wang from next door, came over. She said, I had this very strange dream last night. It was so vivid. Two people came and told me they would only rain if Li Bingjun would sign his name. You said I had the same dream. They said that he must sign his name, but where can we find this person? I don't know who he is. She said, I don't know either. We can only ask around. And in the end, she said, could it be my brother-in-law? Could it be him? Let's try. It's hard to say. Let's try. And they went to see him. He was sitting on a stool. His name is known to them was Li Shangchen. No one knew him by the name Li Bingjun. And so she pushed the door open and went inside. And he said, Sister, how are you? And then she turned to Wang and said, young lady, please come and have a seat. Have a seat. And she sat down. And upon seeing, I love he tells stories. Upon seeing him, he said, are you going to sign your name for us, brother? You must not be ungrateful. You must sign your name for us for this rain, for this ritual. He said, caught by surprise, he said, Sister, could you please tell me, when did you know that my name is Li Bingshun? She said, never mind that. Sign your name on this. However, bearing witness, he said, however, you must bear witness that I won't sign my name under two circumstances. I will only sign my name for one reason. If it's for benefiting everyone, I will sign it. But if it's for persecuting people or suing somebody, then I'm sorry, I cannot do it. She said, it's for the good of the people. This is to help the town pray for rain. He said he wouldn't sign it. So I asked him why. And he said, since my morality is not up to the level and I don't have that kind of quality, I am not qualified to sign it. I don't have that kind of virtue. And she said, never mind if you qualified or not. Just write your name. Just write that name and beseech the heavens to give us rain. That's it. Just write those few words. And she urged him to sign no matter what. He said, when you bring it over here, you cannot speak baseless nonsense. She said, we won't. We will quietly burn it. We will take it to the altar and burn it discreetly. Fine. That's fine as long as you burn it discreetly. He then wrote the plea saying how people were suffering, and he implored the heavens for rain. He signed his name. Only then did he say, no one knew me by that name. That name was given to me by my father when I was born. But later, a Taoist priest said the name was not auspicious or whatever, and therefore it could not be used. Ever since, no one has known me as Li Bingjun. Only my father told me that I was once named that Li Bingjun, but it was rescinded by a Taoist practitioner. And that's why when you called me by that name today, I found it very strange. Where did you know that name from? And only after he had signed his name did they tell him about their dream. He smiled and said, I am filled with humility. Who am I to tell the heavens to send you a message in a dream? And that was it. They took the plea over there that same day. The sun was so hot and bright that even from afar, the houses looked as if they were on fire. When they took the plea to the altar, rather than burning it themselves, they told the presiding master, it is signed by one Li Bingjun. Once you burn it, there will be rain. And the master was infuriated and he said, what rain are you talking about? Don't you mess things up. We're conducting Taoist rituals here. We're performing Taoist rituals here, and the monks are performing other rituals. All those large altars have been built and set up over there to pray for rain, and we've been praying for several months already. She said, if you don't burn this, it won't rain. If you don't burn the signature, there won't be any rain. He still didn't believe her. She said, you must burn it. Just burn it and it will rain. She kneeled on the ground and she pleaded to the master over and over. And finally, one of the monks agreed. He said, fine, come over here. I'll burn it for you in there. It is to pray for rain anyway. No harm can be done. And as soon as the plea was burned to ashes, within just a few seconds, the bright and shining, 1 second, the bright and shining sky suddenly filled with roaring thunder. Within 2 minutes, it started pouring rain and the ground was flooded. It was astonishing. What a great holy monk he was. All of you can, of course, consider him your fellow brother because he's a disciple and you are of the same generation. Generation meaning not just the generation in age, of the same capacity for the same capacity for generation. Understand the double entendre of the words. You have to be able to cut through and really see the point of something when something is said, not just the words, but if you can cut through with your wisdom and see. So I have a lot of respect for him. And that was the story. Remember, I'm on page 15 next time, and it only goes to page 16. So we'll just come to the conclusion of the manner, and how he closes with, in humility, he thinks of himself as an ordinary cultivator. You must also, no matter how accomplished you become. Can somebody offer up?
We offer the merit of our practice today for all living beings.
Thank you.